Ready to go? All right. Good morning. We're going to call the Wednesday, March 11, 2020 Wastewater Committee to order. At this time, we'll stand and pledge a flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time, I'll now call the roll.
Present.
Here. And public comment, note this is the time for the members of the public who wish to address the council, or in this case, the committee, on any subject within the jurisdiction of the city of Ione that's not on the agenda. This time, would you please, there you go.
Yeah, Larry Rhodes. I've asked a couple of times how the first pond that our sewer line dumps into, what's the percentage of its fill? And I've never got an answer about that.
Just to clarify, the pond one you're talking over at the golf course?
No, I'm talking about our sewer plant.
Our pond one. Okay.
I guess it's pond one. The one it first dumps into. It don't make any, I don't know which one it is personally.
Okay.
I'd just like to know the percentage of its full.
Oh, like the freeboard you're talking about?
How much sludge is in it?
Oh, sludge. Okay. I want to clarify your question.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just, let me. You're talking about currently or?
Well, right now.
Right now, okay. The public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to our regular agenda. Item number 1, wastewater line easement with CDCR.
Committee members, for the last several months, we've actually been working with CDCR with a number of easements that they have applied for that are within city properties and city rights-of-way. Primarily, it's the pipeline that extends all the way down to Woodard Bottom on Dave Brubeck Road, as well as some antenna sites at the Castle Oaks Wastewater Treatment Plant. And we're just about done with reviewing those easements and bringing them forward to the council for review. But one of the things that the city manager has brought up is, right now the way that the easements read is that the city is granting to the state what's considered a non-exclusive public easement to access, locate, relocate, construct, reconstruct, alter, use, and a number of different things for those underground pipelines. And there's a question as to whether we want that non-exclusive, meaning that, you know, we grant it to the state, but whether it be an exclusive right where we just want the state and the city to have rights to maintain, or granting the state only one.
I'm a little hesitant to say, oh, the state, you know, feel free to do or bring in other people or whatever. I think this needs to be, it's in the city's proper, it needs to be exclusive, and we have say over who else gets to use it, and we have veto power over who else gets to use it.
Okay.
I would fully support that.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I explained to the city manager is that literally we're returning the last plan check, as it was put on my desk at the end of last week, and I've held off returning it to CDCR until today's meeting to make sure that we're in support of requesting what we'll call an exclusive easement, or just an easement between the state and the city.
The other thing that I want to throw out is always some question about the amount of effluent going to the tertiary plant for the golf course. I want to make sure, in terms of before we sign any easements, that there is a clear understanding in terms of what an expectation or contract, however you want to phrase it, as to how much effluent per year CDCR will be providing the tertiary plant for the golf course.
Sure. Yeah.
They're not currently involved with our permit, but they are part of the contract, correct?
Yes, they're not involved or named on the permit. They are involved with a contract because, thank you, because part of the 650 acre feet that's quote under ARSA, 350 of that is for CDCR to utilize. And while ARSA will be going away in 2022 or 2023, Mill Creek State Prison still will be and should be providing effluent to the tertiary plant for the golf course.
So as part of this easement, can we add in there that, because that contract's gonna, the first thing they're gonna say is, you know, ARSA's gone. This contract is not valid anymore, so we need a new one. And if that's the case, then can we put that as parcel of this?
It's a part of it, but it'll be a separate agreement, but we should not move forward until we have that commitment to sign this. And again, if the state doesn't want to, you know, build a pipe around the city.
Yeah. Well, I suspect too, with the runoff issues and stuff they're having over there, the call for and all that kind of stuff, I suspect they may end up having to put in a collection device, and they may require the ranchers too, but I don't know.
And it may not ever get to Woodard Bottom. That's the thing that we also have to remember. It may never get there.
Right. Well, I think what I'm looking at, just from the high level, I think that CDCR, if they are put in the fire, they're probably going to have to redo something for their industrial and their people waste, and then they're not going to be able to use their spray fuels like they had been, because that seems to have been the problem where they've been overwatering or whatever the non-agronomic rate is. So they're going to plant cover crops. They're going to do something because they're getting rid of the excess of the 350, which that kind of pushes that. They're going to have to dispose of it somewhere.
Well, and again, you go back to, instead of disposing it on the spray fields or whatever, it can go to the it can go to the tertiary plant to the golf course.
Sure. If we have need, it looks to me like ours. I don't think I haven't heard anything new that's still on the bench, as near as I can tell.
Right, but again, in terms of getting things down so that there's that clear understanding, that clear expectation.
Sure, definitely. Sure.
Don't want to sign anything before we have all the other components in place.
Yeah, as we near that time, I think we'll start to figure out too we can kind of take whatever they need to get rid of at this point if ARSA is out.
Yeah.
We're able to produce enough, we got enough disposal capacity, all that kind of stuff, which we haven't had in the past.
And again, there are still questions that haven't been answered by regional water quality.
Do we know what they're producing over there at the prison at all? Or?
Last I was told, it was right around 500 acre feet.
Yeah, that's about normal. Because I know they dispose of the balance over there in the fields and all that. That's on a dry year, it isn't really a big deal. Largely.
Right, but like I said, in terms of before moving forward with anything, we need to make sure that we have some things in place that we have assurances.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. I'm totally agree.
I also have my hair on the back of my neck stands up when I see forever. This is a forever, non-exclusive public easement to access local and relocate construction, whatever. Does it have to be forever? Can we put a 50-year or 25-year? Is there an out clause on this at all? If some situations change and we no longer need or want or want to be part and parcel with the prison?
Well, what this is for is simply the city granting the state the ability to get in and maintain that pipeline if something were needed to be maintained. As John mentioned, the use of the line will be under a separate contract in the volume and et cetera, but this is just simply to allow them to get into our right of way.
Okay.
So
We want them maintaining it too.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
you can put limits on easements, but I'll tell you from a title perspective, it gets to be a little bit of a hassle because then somebody has to monitor when the expiration date is.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
25 years from now.
Well, if it's strictly an access, if it's strictly access, then we'll deal with the other later.
Yeah, because again, the water, that can be a 5-year, 3-year, 20,
Right.
however you
Right.
want to go. That's.
That we don't want to, sign our life away forever. Okay.
Any comments,
Nope.
discussion? All right, public comment, please.
Yeah, I hope if you do make a contract with the CDC about the water for the thing that you limit where you don't have to take it if you don't need it, because then we have no place to store it. If we write a contract where we gotta end up taking
Have to
so
take it,
much,
yeah.
we're gonna be in. And another thing that was brought up last meeting is about the overchlorine and not paying per. That should be billed to the CDC. They're putting the chlorine and we aren't. I think that ought to be in that contract too, so they have to pay, if they overchlorinate it and call per, or whoever's running it at that time, we get reimbursed for it. I know it's a little paperwork, but my God.
Yeah, I mean, for going ahead for the future, I'm trying to engage conversation, but I know that like right now, it's mandated by the judge that they pay their amount and we take care of it. And that's what the press and pond too, it's the same thing. They kill us with this overloaded wastewater and we have to clean it, that's the deal.
Yeah, we're responsible for it once we receive it, that's what I'm trying to say.
Correct, that is true, yes, and we'll work on that. Thanks, Rick.
Contract,
That's a good point.
absolutely.
Yes, definitely. There's no true up right now. Anyone else? Okay, we'll close with a comment. So we're just gonna make a recommendation to pursue the wastewater line easement with CDCR and exclusive agreement.
Non-exclusive.
Not,
No, an exclusive.
Exclusive,
It's just
yes,
us.
we have the.
And that we continue the negotiations
Right.
related to the commitment of effluent for the tertiary plant and the golf course before any document is signed.
Great.
We want that,
yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
okay?
Very good. All right, any other comment, discussion? All right, item number 2, the NOV and response plan.
Yeah, we kind of brought this up at the city council meeting last night, and I kind of want to spend a little bit more time going into this. There are 4 components of this: the spill detection and response, the backup generator, the arsenic contamination, and the groundwater pollution sources. And I'm going to start with the backup generator because we kind of talked about that. This is the state just, I'm sorry, being ridiculous. Now, there was brought up that we do have a backup generator that doesn't meet Tier 4 compliance. So, technically, you can't use it. My thought process, as I kind of alluded to, is we do have a backup generator. But our practice in the event of power shutoffs is to turn the tertiary plant off. That is the safest thing to do. It makes no sense to have a backup generator to pump to the golf course, because again, the golf course would need, I think Dominic said something like 5 generators to do the spray irrigation. Irrigating a golf course is not what I would consider a critical issue.
Well, at least not initially. I mean, it's gonna be up for a few hours or a day. No, maybe after that power's been up for a week, maybe it becomes a problem. But even then, you can go around generators in that time.
Well, and again, if we need to get rid of, because when this occurred, this was November. Okay, we shut the plant off, I think, 2 weeks later. So I mean, we're not irrigating the golf course at 1 million gallons a day. I mean, I'll have to look at the numbers, but my guess is we're right around 300 or 400. And again, this is the end of the year, end of the cycle. So turning it off is the safest, most effective way to prevent any spills.
And I think the golf course too, it's in the non-shut-off zone because everything's undergrounded anyway, so the wind's not going to affect it during the summer. And the fall, I mean, it's it's not really necessary, but yeah. So do you think we have pushback from them? Do they think they're going to say? I mean,
Well,
they'll make you do ridiculous things. They can spend tons of money for no good reason.
Well,
Does our permit require that we have a backup generator? Is there language in the permit and or
the A9 talks about other policies, procedures, equipment. It doesn't specifically state you have to have it. You can either have backup generators or policies and procedures to deal with this specific issue. Okay? The state regional water quality board, in my opinion, is kind of going, oh, we're going to change some of these requirements. And again, one of them is when we do the quarterly and annual report, now they're saying, oh, all of them, have to be one report. Well, that's not what the permit says.
Right.
So again, as we move forward with this, like with the backup generator portion plan that's due in May, it is my intention to say that we do have a backup generator here. I'll show them a photograph of it. But again, our policies and procedures are going to be, first and foremost, shut the system down. It's not that critical. We have other ways to move effluent if we have to the wastewater plant and spray irrigate there or do the percolation. But again, when these events have occurred, it's been in the fall. That doesn't mean it can't happen earlier, but again, shutting it down is the most effective way to deal with it.
Well, I think we should list the alternatives and or bring the point up too, that if we buy a generator and run it, it's gonna be pollute the earth with greenhouse gas, and that's, I mean,
But
think
again-
about all that kind of stuff, and
Right.
Well, if we're running a generator and we're pumping to
What probably
the
just golf
ponds,
courses, what are they, to what end?
you stand a greater chance of overflowing because there's no way to move the effluent
right.
from there. So again, I mean, it's just somebody, and I had a conversation with our representative and explained all that, and I think I said this at the council meeting. He seemed to get it, but when he ran it up to his supervisors and that, it got shot down. And again, I just, I don't think they fully understand how the system works. I think they're going, okay, everything needs a backup generator. I disagree with that.
Well, if the contract and the permit language says either or.
Yeah,
You just
we have
quote that
options.
language and put that in your response and say, we have both at this point.
And then
The whole thing would be
And-
solved with a one float valve in the first pond. When it gets to a certain bit of freeboard, it kicks off, and when it goes down and goes to the system, it kicks back on. The simplest thing on earth to fix. The generator's not gonna help any, they actually won't even do anything, really, when it comes right down to it.
But again, we're still back to the safest is shut it down.
Yeah.
And then again, do the visual inspections, and then have human communication, because even the electronic stuff can follow.
Do the lead on the project over there, are they even familiar at all with our system, or they just going off paper, or or they just go off a protocol list, or the inside there at all, or?
Like Kenny, who I'm working with,
Yeah,
yeah, he's been out to the plant.
all right, so he has an idea what's.
He has an idea. Like I said, I think he got it in terms of what needs to be done, but I don't think his superiors who make the decisions
Who aren't familiar.
I don't doubt.
aren't familiar. And again, I think that's where the hangup is. I mean, it's like I said, this is, and we may get pushback. I'll be the first to say that. We may get pushback, but again, if we're looking at making sure there are no spills, we're making sure we're doing due diligence to be as safe as possible during a power shutoff, shutting down the plant is the best way to go.
You're right, in the long run too, I mean, the biggest thing is just avoid another fine, because that's more expensive than anything else, because if you get fined, you have to buy it anyway, that kind of thing, it's just.
And remember, I'll go back to it, it's a plan. So if the state is really going to dictate that, there has to be those backup, then we will be looking for emergency services grants to cover that cost. It doesn't say you have to have the generator purchased and installed by April, whatever. It says you have to have a plan.
Well, if we had a secondary use for the generator that we could easily use elsewhere, that would be great, because it'd be useful someplace.
And we do have other generators for the lift station, the pump station.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, if you look at all this, you go back to, this doesn't make sense. This is just an agency who's going, you do this. And like I said, I'm back to the solution is turning the system off.
My personal experience there, it seems like if you spend money on things, that equates solving problems, which we know is not.
It's not true, like
It's
I
not
said.
at all, but that's what it sounds
Well,
like. That's
but
not-
again, I mean, that's the approach that I'm recommending that we take. We may get some pushback after. But again, in terms of that one, I think that solves the problem.
So the plan is then you'll respond by May 1st, or you're.
Yeah, on that one, that's May 1st.
Alright.
The spill detection and response plan, that one's due here in April. I need to sit down with the golf course in terms of what their protocols are going to be and what they're going to be looking at. Again, in terms of the spill detection, we have high alarm systems at the wastewater, at the tertiary plant that will notify us and shut the system down.
So I'm surprised we don't have that already, but I mean, it's kind of a one-off thing too. I mean, it's not like it's ever happened before, I don't think, not this.
Yeah. This was caused by human error.
Yeah, this was
Plain and
communication.
simple.
There was a lack of communication,
Yeah.
is what it comes down
And
to.
they had a pipe break too in the middle of the whole thing too, which is what kind of, I know I've done that before too, you get going on something, you forget about it, because you're in the middle of something else breaks, that's why you're trying to solve it.
Yeah, well, and I think if you put in your spill detection response plan, that there will be ongoing communications between both parties with visual on ponds during the process, every 45 minutes or every hour or every 6 hours or whatever, is appropriate. I think you're addressing what happened, how it happened, and what your fix is.
But even if we're speculating in terms of, okay, you have something other than this that happens. Okay, at the plant, like I said, we have high
Right,
alarm.
We have those
That
capabilities as
shuts
well.
the plant down.
And we're back to shutting it down.
So then on the arsenic and the contamination,
That is the ARSA is going to be addressing that.
we're relatively sure that that's coming from up gradient.
I have, like I said, do not know until we get any, and I will not speculate in terms of what I.
And they offered no hypothesis.
And one thing too, a lot of this stuff is background. It's either background or it's contaminated from mining or whatever it happens to be. But I think by the time we got a solution together, ARSA will be out of our system. So that could be the.
Well, and that may be something that we need to look at in terms of if Preston is, to what level of contamination there might be related to arsenic, in terms of the conversation with CDCR about using that pond, how is it going to be mitigated before we use it, and can it be in terms of a reasonable time frame?
Where's the grab that had the arsenic in it? Where was that from?
I can't answer that.
Okay, because my thought there too is like a lot of these things, if we know the specific source of the arsenic, we know the level, we haven't know what the levels are at all. Because
They said elevated was.
Yeah, it was.
Does that mean we're in violation, or does it mean that was over the allowable amount? Do we know what that specifically means, or?
I'm assuming there was a violation because that's one of the things in terms of the permit we were written up for.
My only thought there is if you know the specific source, specific amounts, then we add enough effluent to that, mix it up, and then you can actually get below that by diluting it. But that's just a thought. I'm just.
Right, and like I said, until ARSA provides information, I can't answer.
Okay. And do we have a timeline on that at all? Or
Well, again, they have to provide, and this report has to be in by May 1st, so.
Okay, well, if they have the meeting and I'm available, last time I just wasn't available, I couldn't get back up either. If they have the meeting, I'll show up there and specifically request that from them. So I'm not sure they should have them this month. They normally do. They're off and on all the time, so. Okay, well, that's good to know.
Okay. And then the last item in terms of the report is groundwater pollution sources.
There's only one source that we can come up with as our possible solution, and that's Mule Creek State Prison.
Look
And I
up
think we ought to
gradient,
say
look
that.
upstream,
Right,
and
I
that's.
think we ought to clearly state that. They're gonna come in and go after us for this, baloney, they can go after the source.
Like I said, that seems to be the most obvious that they're looking for likely sources.
Bet,
There it is.
there it
Well,
is.
and they may end up finding us, and we may have to go after them. That's kind
And
of.
if that's the case, then so be it, but, until they come up with some kind of a report on what they're doing with Mule Creek, they can't push this back to us.
And what specific pollutants were they referring to?
Well, I shouldn't say they can't, but.
Total,
It was all solids?
yeah. And again,
Chloroform.
and again, there was and then it was like, what are the likely sources? Again, you go back to upstream, it is Mill Creek State Prison.
So then the chlorine, we think the chlorine water was coming from them because they have a contact chamber? How do they run that system, Because usually it evaporates or falls out of the system over a certain period of time. There's an exposure period, and then it's supposed to.
And again, it's groundwater, so how long it takes to go from surface to
They're saying
ground.
chlorine in the groundwater.
No, they're
No,
saying,
chloroform,
Chloroform.
yeah,
Oh.
okay.
not,
They're,
Not chloroform.
again, it's just.
and
The
contamination.
likely sources of contamination. And
Right.
again, we go back to upstream.
Yes,
For sure, oh, yeah.
and that's that, I mean.
Yeah, it isn't.
The spill that happened was tertiary quality water, it's not,
Shouldn't be
sorry,
polluted,
it's
but-
not,
And I know the golf course uses fertilizers and all that, but we, you know, if it's in the groundwater, you'd think we see spikes, you'd think we see higher numbers. Talking to Chris Strong, who does the analysis, you know, he's not seeing anything unusual there. And again, you know, he's kind of with us going, okay, if you really want to look at, you know, the likely sources of pollution of the groundwater, look upstream. Guess what's there?
And this is the first time that we've seen this show up in the system that's been at this level, or?
Well, it's been in our reports, it's starting to come on, and that's why the state is asking, you know,
So it's
what
elevated, okay.
are the likely sources? It doesn't.
Take a brain surgeon.
Yeah, there's what it is. So, you know, the responses back in terms of these 4 reports, using common sense in terms of answering the questions and then the policies and procedures, I just need to make you aware we may get some pushback.
Sure, I would expect it.
Okay?
Okay, any other comments, discussion? Public comment?
This groundwater pollution thing, we got if I remember right, we got a test well, this is side of 104 Bridge, right across from Mule Creek Prison. Maybe we could get our people that check ours, check that groundwater there, because it ain't been checked in years.
Okay.
And see if the groundwater's there, and that would almost prove that it's coming from the prison.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Consider public comment, we'll close public comment. On to item number 3, CIP water balance.
Yeah, committee members, as the council approved, we're working away on the water balance update. I could just tell you we gathered a whole bunch of background information, including all the updated flows, and we're in the process of working through that. The other thing that I wanted to, this item is covering is the CIP update for this year capital improvement program. So recently I've been working with the city manager to get some budgetary information, but what I've done is kind of separated on the wastewater end of things. I've separated it into the collection system needs and then the wastewater treatment plant needs. And I've worked with Brett over at the wastewater plant as far as getting an updated list of projects. And what I handed out to you and can make available to the public. Back in 2011, we reviewed the citywide CCTV video of the entire collection system and prioritized the damage or the deficiencies that we saw in the system into priority 1, 2, and 3. Priority 1 being the highest need, priority 3 being the lowest need. And I've gone back and updated that list and indexed it, the costs up to from 2011 to now. And what we have in priority 1, we have just over $1 million worth of sewer repair needed in priority 1s, about $544,000 in priority 2s, $562,000 in priority 3s, and then West Marlette has just that line alone as a priority 3, but that has about $986,000 worth of repairs and replacements that are needed in West Marlette. So the collection system total is a little over 3.1 million. And again, that's, I don't want to give the impression that all that is needed in a year. You know, this is stuff that we need to work at over the course of time. I know the primary focus for the last several years has been getting the liners in and all the things at the wastewater treatment plant that we've needed, but as money allows, what I'm talking about with the city managers is actually using some of the monies that are collected annually to start doing some of these higher priority sewer collection system projects to get the repairs done on that. Then on the wastewater treatment plant end of things, there are about 7 different projects that most of those which I've gotten from Brett. But the top one on the list was the wastewater treatment plant headworks, which is, that screens the effluent in essence before it actually goes into pond 1 at the wastewater treatment plant. And Larry Rhodes mentioned he wanted to know how much sludge was currently in Pond 1. But one of the reasons why we're accumulating so much sludge in Pond 1 is because we're not screening it before it goes in there, so it
Yeah, I
just.
think Brett brought that up about putting a screening system in.
So one of the things in the water balance report that we're gonna be talking about is the improvements needed. And we have recently received estimates from Perk Water on what they feel it would take to design and install the headworks at the wastewater treatment plant, and that's just under $955,000. So
Talking about a screw press or screenings and then a screw press? Or just
usually it's a couple of different things. A lot of times they'll have mechanical screens to take out a lot of the solids that are in there. I wouldn't necessarily say that a screw press. It's mainly screening before it goes in, and then
does it dry it and then it puts it into a dumpster? Or
it
something?
can. Yeah, you can actually put it into what's called a muffin monster.
Yeah.
And it dries it and automatically puts it in a bin. So
It's like pellets, I guess. Isn't it?
yeah. So that was one of the, well, by far and away, except for if we are required to build Pond 8, that is by far and away the most expensive thing needed at either the treatment plants. Brett had mentioned that there's some pump protection improvements, some pump railing and still well, or stilling well work, some drying bed capacity work at the Castle Oaks plant, and some discharge pump improvements. Those total up probably to between $300,000 to $400,000. And then the other large one that's on the list, of course, would be if we were required to actually construct Pond 8. And that was taken out of the 2016 report that Dexter Wilson did. We haven't updated that cost yet, but indexing that to nowadays cost, it was a little over $8.5 million for that. So the total wastewater improvements, including the headworks and the pond, was just a little over $9.9 million.
Okay, and that's the massive pond we have to build for storage?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That would basically take up, at least from what I saw from Dexter Wilson's report back in 2016, it pretty much takes up the whole city field.
Yeah, are they, I mean, it's on the list, but is it still something they're gonna mandate, do you think? Or, I mean, I think a lot of this with ARSA going out, it actually gives us a little more breathing room, I think.
Well, that's partly what the water balance update is being done, but what we're hopeful of is if ARSA goes away and Preston is available for storage, the cost to build a pump station to get treated effluent up to Preston is gonna be significantly less than having to build a whole pond at the treatment plant.
And nothing else, we'd have to build a smaller pond instead of, one great big one or whatever we'd have to do.
Possibly,
So,
but Preston Reservoir,
Yeah.
if we have that completely available to us and CDCR isn't using that's much larger than what we would probably need.
Yeah, I don't think they will, no, they might use it, I guess, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Anyway, that's generally the update, kind of where we're at. That's a progress report that, again, I'm working with the city manager to establish some budgets on when some of this is going to take place. So we'll bring the CIP, a draft CIP forward that not only covers wastewater, but all the other components of the infrastructure. That'll be coming probably in May.
Sounds good, very good, thanks, Sean.
Is there a reason we're not seeing the pond cleanouts in here? Is that just part of the maintenance plan? So when we have to redo the cleaning of the ponds, is that not part of this program, or is that a separate?
That's
reporting?
separate. That is much more maintenance. But the other thing that I will say is if we were to move ahead with the headworks, I think you would see the accumulation of sludge and the need to remove that
Right.
at a much less frequent interval.
Very good.
Can I ask that we see what when we're gonna do the next cleaning and include that as part of this process as well, so we know what the full costs are going to be going forward?
On the sewer repair projects, do you know any idea, are there any places where they're centrally, specifically located? I mean, are we talking about the old part of town, or is it all over? I'm sure it's all over, but.
We used to have a map up on the wall
Oh, yeah.
that had all the projects. Let's see if I I know this is a horrible visual to hold up, but that's a map of the city, and anything that's highlighted.
Yeah. Because I know with some of our.
There's a fair amount in the old part of town. Actually, probably the majority of it's in the old part of town. There's also some off of Preston,
Okay.
and then West Marlette is an issue as well.
And are the windows as they're prioritized, is there any thought or any input added to the report that also reflects the Ione? Because I know some of these, I'm sure, will reduce it drastically.
That's primarily what the whole focus of this is.
Okay. That makes sense.
I mean, what we saw in the CCTV videos were cracked pipes, broken pipes, offset pipes, major root intrusions, and all of that would allow groundwater to get into the system, and it does. And so the primary focus of going after some of this is not only to lessen the repairs needed for having to get out and clean a line, but also probably the bigger impetus is reduce the inflow and infiltration into the plant, which is pretty significant.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not bad because it dilutes the water. I mean, some systems are too dry and they actually create, you almost have to have a,
Right.
Okay.
And in relation to that, again, a little bit off topic with this, but as we start looking at the old part of town, again, the importance of working with the Amateur Water Agency is if we're going to replace sewer lines, then we should be looking at, replacing the water lines as well, so that when it's all said and done, you can, put a lift on the street and hopefully not have to worry about cutting it or just having a trench.
The roads are pretty rough too, some of them, so.
Right.
Well, and West Marlette seems to always be at the bottom of the list because it's such a big project, but at some point it may just push itself very much to the top by a full-on system failure.
Well, I know they're talking about repaving West Marlette. I thought it was like in next year, the year after, something like that in the road improvement plan, so it may be in conjunction with that too.
Well, there's a lot of things on West Marlette, and we can get off the wastewater end of things. I will say that I believe the CCTV video of West Marlette, it wasn't horrific at the time when it was done in 2011. I mean, definitely there was some stuff that was needed, but it wasn't on the verge of collapse. Now, granted, that was done almost 10 years ago in that video, so I don't know whether PERC has done any additional CCTV, but I will tell you that if you look at the transportation element of the general plan, there's ultimately bike lanes that are supposed to be there, which would include sidewalk and widening and a number of things. So the biggest thing there, and what I was telling the city manager before the meeting, we've gone through a lot of the recommended streets that are scheduled for some kind of rehabilitation, and we've overlaid that on top of all the sewer repair projects, and it cut the list down pretty significantly because we don't want to go treating streets to the extent that we're going to come back and have to rip them up for sewer projects. So.
It sounds like they're putting on Main Street another year too, Caltrans is too, just to put that in the back of the file too.
Okay.
Just to.
Yeah, they pushed
have a
it back
side
to
note.
next year.
Your discussion or comments?
The 9 million that you have here, that does not include the new pond?
It does.
It
It's
does.
8.5 out of
That's the new
9.9
pond.
is
Got
the
it.
actual
Okay.
new pond.
All right. That was just one clarification. Thank you.
Public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. On to the PERC report, that is pulled. That item is actually, we're gonna pull that item. Brett Morose is very sick today, so he is not gonna be in. So let that one go. Let's see. Number 5, roller aeration brush rebuild.
Yes, at the previous council meeting, we talked about replacing a roller brush with a new unit, and council wanted to look at the cost of rebuild. I had Brett get quotes in terms of the parts that are needed and a powder coated 96-inch rotor. And we can get the stainless steel rotor as well, but that price is significantly higher. And I wish Brett was here because he'd be able to discuss this in more detail than I can. But realistically, in terms of looking at the parts to rebuild, $9,425.46.
Okay.
Well,
plus
that's
shipping.
not going with the stainless steel, right?
That's not going with the stainless
It's
steel.
just the powder coated, which
Powder
is
coat.
probably gonna last a little less.
What's the
less
lifespan
likely.
difference, do we know, or like you're asking?
Significant, from what Brett had said.
Okay.
Stainless steel will
What was the
pretty
cost
much
difference?
last forever. Well, it's on the next page, you have it,
Yeah.
it's 11,000 for the stainless steel.
There you go,
So you're talking about $15,000 if we go with the stainless steel, $9,000 for a system that is gonna have to be, continue to be rebuilt.
yeah.
Because of the structure and the style of it, the water is constantly getting into the gears. The way the rotor sits, it's putting pressure on the gears and the rotors. So we're looking at spending $9,000 for something that might last 3 to 5 years.
Okay. All right.
That's not very good return on your investment, from my perspective. It's a Band-Aid on something that, if we go looking at the new product, which came in at 29,000
Correct.
and some change, you're looking at a new product that has a better design, it's a stainless steel rotor. The return on your investment on that is going to be, 15 to 20 years as opposed to 3 to 5, spending 9,000. My personal opinion is if we're going to continue to Band-Aid things like this is doing us a disservice. I think if we're going to do something like that, if we have this, at this point, one that needs to be replaced with this level of service, I think we ought to replace it with a newer model that's going to be a much better product for us. It's got warranties, it's stainless steel rotor. My personal recommendation is that we go with the new one. It's a far superior return on our investment.
And just for my piece of it, I was not able to make it. I was out of town that day when they had the tour, and I emailed it back, but we were able to get back together, just a heads up, so you were there, so I appreciate that.
The other thing is we do have another one that is going to be in need of some repairs as well. And maybe that one we can repair at this point, and next year put it in the budget to replace these as they break down with the newer model and the stainless steel, which is obviously a superior product. But the next one's going to be coming down the line here, relatively quickly.
Okay.
So.
I appreciate you going out there. Like I said, I wasn't able to make it. Okay. Public comment?
I kind of hate to bring it up again, but you had aerators in there, all this money would be wasted. You got 2 brand new pumps down there threw out of a building, and those aerators they have, the bubblers they call them, are only plastic, and the only reason it broke was an 1.25 inch plastic line, and they wouldn't glue it back together. And we wouldn't be going through all this.
Public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment.
So I would say having seen it, went through the process with Brett, I would recommend that we replace the one that we have and budget, and if need be, repair the secondary one as it breaks, but budget for a replacement of that one.
Okay.
And going forward, budget to replace some of the other ones, because they're all of the same design. And at some point, they're all gonna need, extensive repairs.
I'll support your recommendation.
Okay. I will bring that recommendation to council.
Very good. Okay. All right, item number 6, Mill Creek State Prison waste stormwater issues.
As I reported at the city council meeting, we have been trying to get CDCR and the wastewater, the Regional Water Quality Board to come to provide us information related to the prison waste and stormwater issues. It has been silent until
Yesterday.
Last Thursday, actually.
Thursday, when I got an email that
By the
said,
way,
that basically said, by the way, we're giving a presentation to the county on this issue at their Board of Supervisors March 24th meeting.
And so yesterday I was at the Citizens Action Committee, and I voiced my very, well, I reflected what we, on Monday night. I told them very clear terms what we were expecting, and that we were fairly upset that you did not show up. The warden himself said that he will make sure somebody will be here on the 17th meeting coming up on Tuesday.
Okay.
He will have somebody here.
I
That's
will-
what he
We
said.
want somebody here with both of them.
Because I mean, in their minds, I mean, the warden's got a million and one things going. The maintenance guys behind me, the guys that actually do the reports and stuff, they're out in the field somewhere. But I told them our extreme displeasure with their behavior and performance and responses. It's been kind of, I said, we feel like you're just kind of ignoring us. I said, then we read about you, or hear about you guys going to the Board of Supervisors, and I'm like, we've been asking for this. You said you do it, you haven't done it. I said, we're kind of getting a little weary here. And he's like, well, we will definitely take care of that. So he said that they will have somebody here on our next city council meeting. I think we were pretty clear about where we're at with that.
I will agendize that.
Please do. And they, I mean, and I think a lot of that, I mean, like I say, there's a bunch of things, they're under all kinds of pressure there, obviously, not to make an excuse, but he did say that they're pretty much in a holding pattern, waiting on the state to get back to them from their gigantic report. And that's their kind of their thought, that's their kind of opinion. He's like, well, there's no work order because there's been no recommendation. I know it's a violation. I mean, was it 15 pages? We got clear directions what to do. That's our turn, we have to give a response, and then they'll tell us what to do after that, or how we would work that out. They haven't even got a response from the Regional Water Quality Control Board. I mean, I don't know, they can find themselves, I suppose, the state could, but I don't know what good that would do. They need to we just want to get fixed and get on the program.
And like I said, I mean, a lot of my inquiry has been to the Regional Water Quality Board because they are the regulatory agency.
Right.
They should be able to provide some update on a regular basis.
Well, and I don't think the CDCR, they really understand the angst that's down over here across the street, because I mean, they're kind of like, what do you mean? I said, man, it's worse than it's ever been. I said, you should have been at the meeting. I said, you would have heard all about it. I said, it was, and they're like, what do you mean? I said, it's not gotten better. I said, it's like, people are really, really upset with you, and we don't feel like we're getting any conversation back and forth.
Well, it's because we're not.
Well, I know, well, exactly. So, but I mean, so they're waiting on a response, but they will send somebody here at our meeting on Tuesday night and help clarify their position, and at least get it moving, so.
And again, I still would like to have Regional Water Quality with
I would
them.
like them both here because.
And again, here's what I'll do.
This.
I'll let Mr. Croyle know that there's gonna be a representative on the 17th from the prison system to talk about it. We really would like somebody from regional to be there.
I would not use the word like, I would say, we want you to be here.
Okay.
I don't think we need to be, I mean, there's no pussyfooting around this
I think the
anymore.
last time they were here,
I'm done with it.
yeah. Well, I think the last time they were here, they were getting ready to fine us, I think. Is that the last time Regional was here? I mean, it's Pamela Creed, Money Wiles were sitting right there. I remember that was like, well, that was when my first council, so it had been like 8 years ago at least, maybe 9. She either was or either on the way out or right near, but yeah, so it had been almost 10 years ago. That was the last time that they were here. And they were coming because they were basically letting us know they're gonna fine us if you don't have an engineer. I remember very clearly. It kind of stuck in my head there. That was the last time, but yeah, if you can get somebody down here, I don't know how you do that. I mean, I know they're regulator, but
I will try. That's the best I can
I
promise.
appreciate that. I know they're yeah, good luck. It's like I say, it'd be nice. It'd be very helpful. So that's kind of where they're at, though. That was, I mean, like I said, they heard loud and clear what we need, what we're expecting. So I think hopefully they'll be a little more responsive. Yeah, that was, yeah, there's been more to say about that, I guess. Your discussion, public comment?
When you request personnel from corrections, I would ask that you specify you want Bob Sleppy to come back here and explain this mess. Because a lot of this was by the misinformation that man gave you in this very room. I would really be hesitant to get too pissy with regional at this point, because I'd like to remind you, you still are percolating in 2 illegal, unpermitted ponds in violation of a CDO. They still have that over you, and you still haven't had the problem with the sludge stored without a barrier. So there's a lot of axes hanging over you that have nothing to do with Mule Creek State Prison. I would proceed with much caution. Yes, they are being pressured every which way, but Luce Regional hopefully is starting to feel the heat. But you're just not in a position to negotiate. It's just that simple. Do you have any questions? Because I'm just fascinated by, for the contamination, look upstream. Because when we lost the well at my mother's, I look upstream and I see a whole bunch of percolation ponds that you're operating, disposing of Mule Creek's water. So, again, use caution before you start throwing rocks.
Any public comment? See none, we'll close public comment. No further discussion. This meeting is adjourned.